thought I would take you guys along with me for this long weekend of mine. I am just sharing my normal morning routine. So you see I have my latte there. And the first thing I did was I pulled over my daily calendars. This year I have 3 daily calendars, which I admit was a little bit excessive. And for the 2 larger ones, I like to cut them out and use these icons in my journal. The smaller one there, the Eric Little Things one, I don't typically cut them out until I'm ready to put them into my journal. I will never put the large full page in there, so that's why I cut those ones out. I pulled over my Hobonichi Weeks, which is kind of my sloppy planner these days. So what I've been doing to kind of shake up my routine lately is writing in my Hobonichi Weeks quickly the highlights of each day so I don't forget them. And then I have it for reference to fill in my other journals and planners. I originally used to do the Hobonichi Weeks weekly spreads and do those every day, and it just got a little tedious. So now I'm doing those and my take a note spreads a couple days at a time. Because this is a Friday that I don't have work, I'm spending a little bit of time in the morning filling in some of those gaps in my journals. I'm starting with my take a note here. So this is the Monday of this week, and I had already filled in Tuesday and Wednesday, you see there, but I never did Monday. So I'm referencing my Hobonichi Weeks to get a feel for what were the highlights on Monday that I wanted to document. I've been including more doodles lately. I am not the best drawer, but I know the only way I'm going to get better is by practice. So I drew a little pickleball racket and ball. For my drawing, I tend to use my mild liners. I do have Tombow dual brush pens, but I really just love the mild liner colors and tips. So those are my go-to. And then I'm using the soft Tombow Funisuke pen for the larger titles. And then for my journaling and outlining of my doodles, I'm using my Pilot Vanishing Point with a fine tip with Diatramentis Archive ink, which is my new go-to black ink, and you'll see a little bit more about that later in this video. I really love this pen and ink combination. I think this is going to be my basic go-to black that I use pretty regularly. It works more like a gel pen in the ways that fountain pens are frustrating, in that you can write on top of highlights, it doesn't smear, it writes pretty smoothly, but it still looks like fountain pen ink, and you still have the fountain pen ink experience, which I really like. I'm also documenting that we finished our hot fudge the week before or 2 weeks before, I think, we made homemade ice cream, and I made some hot fudge over the weekend. And so we finished that on that Monday night. And then I'm just filling in a little bit with some washi tape. I like to add washi and other decorations just to fill in the gaps so that the page looks a little bit more full. And I think that's pretty much it. I wanted to add a sticker at the top there. I typically add something a little bit larger there, but that was just it for that spread. So then I flipped it over quickly. You saw I flipped to the current spread, which has my to-do list at the top in my take a note. And now I'm moving on to my Hobonichi cousin. Because I have a little bit more time this morning, I'm working on filling in gaps. So here I'm working back on the 9th, and I'm just doing a little bit of journaling. So essentially what I do in my Hobonichi cousin is I like to do my daily journaling spread, but when I do have these days with more time, I will go back and fill in older spreads, because I typically don't finish a spread in a day. Some days I don't even open my journal at all. But for this one here, you could see on the 9th, I had done part of it, but not all of it. Here I'm swatching my black ink, that Diatramentis Archive ink. I'm trying to figure out how to do swatching better, and I decided to try with a paintbrush, and I like the way it looks, but I will do more swatching later in this video. I struggle with the paintbrush to get too much ink on the brush, so I need to work on that. But I think I've got it more figured out now after some trial and error that you'll see later in this video. So I just wanted to put that on there as a little swatch, because I hadn't yet swatched this ink in my journal, and I like to swatch all of my inks. Actually, I think I did swatch it, but I swatched it with a Q-tip, which just doesn't look right. So I'm doing the paintbrush method instead. What I have there on the desk next to where I'm writing is my my pencil board from Hobonichi, and I definitely get some questions about this. So basically what I've done is tape a few pieces of Tomoe River paper on top of it using some washi tape. And that's because when I'm journaling, I like having the pencil board behind my page so that I don't feel all of the bumps and other things that I've adhered to the page behind. But I also like the feel of writing on multiple layers of paper. You just get a different feel. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to work on my monthly spread in my Hobonichi Cousin. So my monthly spreads, I tend to work on only a few times a month, and I don't think I've ever shared with you guys the process of me working on it. So what I do is I do one icon per day, or one image per day. And to do that, I wrote out this sticky note where I wrote down all the dates I need to fill in. So you can see I'm back all the way through April 3rd. And when I'm working on this, I believe it's Friday, April 18th. So I have a couple of weeks to fill out. So that sticky note, I just made some notes from looking through my other spreads of what happened every day. And then I pulled out my trays here that have all of my cutouts for magazines and other things that are like the right size for this, to go through them and see what I want to include on certain days. So I'm going to start by going through these trays. If you're curious how I organize these, I do have a video for that, and I will link it in the description box below. I'm just going to go through all of these as my first step, and I'm looking through that list. I'm pulling out some things that might work from categories that I feel like are going to fit what was going on during this time period. And then I will move on to going through my stickers next. Okay, so you saw after I went through the magazine clippings, I also went through some of my daily calendars and cut a few of those out. And now I'm going through some stickers that I really like that I have in my collection. And I use these on a lot of my journaling spreads, but I also use them on this monthly spread as well. And you can see I'm also looking back on some of my dailies, because as I have these stickers out, I'm thinking I want to put them on daily spreads as well. And that is kind of how I kind of work through my journals on a few spreads at a time to make it not take so long. Now I'm going through my stack of flat stickers. So a lot of these are scrapbooking stickers or from journaling or other places. A lot of these you can see are Cocoa Daisy. And I have a section where I have all of these flat stickers organized that I use in my journals and planners and sometimes my scrapbook layouts. But I have this section is organized of all the flat ones because I'm only going to put flat stickers in my Hobonichi Cousin. I'm not going to put, like a puffy sticker. So I'm working through this stack to see what I could include. I added a cloud there because it was a cloudy day. And so essentially I'm just picking icons that represent something that happened that day. So like on the 7th, I pulled a sticker that was a little couch. We got some new chairs delivered, and I felt like that was close enough. On the 14th, we had a bunch of mail, like fun packages delivered, so I put a little mailbox. On the 15th, we went out to pizza and a movie. On the 11th, I met a new employee that I just got, so I had the little hiya speech bubble. And that's just kind of how I'm going through and selecting things. I also, you saw, pulled something to add onto my daily spread. So like I said, I work on a few different spreads and pages at a time. And then I went ahead and put those stickers away. Next, I'm going to go through my sticker organization here. These are my smaller stickers, and I did share a video where I went through how I organized these. It was also with I think a plan with me. I will link that down below. But I added in some pieces from these stickers. I try to do like one sticker per day. I also sometimes will add in some hand lettering. So you see I'm using my Tombow Funisuke soft tip. And I just did it for a couple days where I didn't have an icon to represent what I wanted to include. And I also use it just kind of to break up the icons. I like to have maybe like one per week that is a text one. And I don't know, it adds a little bit more to the spread in my opinion. These stickers that were from Cocoa Daisy were previously in my flat sticker organization, but I realized they will fit in this organization. So I'm sorting them in here by my various categories. A lot of them don't really fit one of my categories. So I'm just figuring out where they will go. They'll go either seasonal or I have an other category. But like I said, I'll link the video where I go through a little bit more of how I organized these stickers. But these are the stickers that I use in my planner pretty much daily. And I only pull out that other stack of stickers when I'm working on my monthly spreads or every so often. I moved away from my journals after that and I worked on my scrapbooking album. And here I am just tidying up my desk in the afternoon. Sometimes I get super messy and you'll see that later in this video. And I just need to go through and tidy everything. I'm currently working on a travel album from our vacation to Doha and Dubai this last February. And so I have everything spread out on my desk for that. But I'm just going through, picking things up and putting them away. This is kind of the end of my crafting, I think, for the day. I will come back and do a little bit of journaling and planning in the evening, but I'm cleaning up at the end of the day because this was a Friday. So how my schedule works is I work full time, but every other Friday I don't work, and I treat that day like a craft work day because I have my YouTube channel and I'm on creative teams. That takes a lot of time. So those Fridays are spent really doing a lot of craft work. I went in the evening and had my time with my boyfriend, had dinner, all of that. And then this evening I was back at my desk. You saw the time there on my watch. It was like 7:30 in the evening. And I'm just doing some of my journaling for the day. I sometimes journal throughout the day, but usually on the days that I am actually working on backfilling my journal and crafting, I don't journal my current daily. And maybe I need to get a little bit better at that. But for whatever reason, I tend to not work on my current daily. And so I had a lot to come back and put in here, but I did make some time this evening to fill in a bit of my daily journal page. I'm using my Pilot Vanishing Point for my main journaling again, and then again my Tombow Funisuke soft point. I did used to use the hard tip a lot, but now I'm really into the soft tip. They're both good for different things. I know this camera angle isn't the best, but what I'm doing here is printing or cropping out media that I printed from my computer. And I will do this a couple times in this video so you can see a little bit more about how I do that. But I get a lot of questions about how I print photos and media to put in my journals. So I print at home. And I will link my printer information down below in the paper that I use. But what I use is a very thin matte photo paper because I feel like it's a good balance between thickness and quality. And I print on 8.5 by 11 sheets at home. I use Photoshop to arrange all of the elements that I want to print onto the 8.5 by 11 sheet. And then I print it out when I have enough to fill a page, which is usually every couple of days. When I'm working on my journal a bit more, like this weekend, I will print, I think, this was on Friday, and then I think I do again maybe on Saturday or Sunday. So you can see here I'm printing a few different photos. I printed some memes and that type of thing. And I'm just going through a couple days at a time and filling in gaps and adding in photos where they make sense, either because it fits the story or it happened that day. And then the memes, sometimes they can just kind of go wherever or it will fit my mood. But I don't always put them all in my journal. Sometimes they'll go into my stacks of my magazine clippings. I have a tray section that is for printed media, and that is where I will put some of the ones that I'm not yet using in my journal. I'm also adding some washi tape and just kind of working on a few spreads at a time, which I find to be the best way for me to kind of keep up with my journal. I reached for my sticker box there, which is higher up on my desk, and I'm going through the stickers again and looking for something to add into my journal. Like I said, this isn't the best angle, so I'm not going to show you guys my entire process, but this was more just to kind of see that I'm checking in the evening with my journals, because I do get a lot of questions about how often do I journal. And I tend to try to check in the evenings most days of the week, even if it's only for like 10 minutes or so. But I am doing some journaling here. So I added an icon for a package from the Coffee Monster Co. And then I'm journaling about a little story that happened where we had a big fail from FedEx, where they were trying to deliver a package for multiple days and it just never showed up. Eventually we got it, but it took a lot of phone calls and such to get the package. Then I'm gluing down this photo, which was actually from a couple days prior, but I had filled in the page before I printed it and forgot that I wanted to include it. So I put it here, which is fine. It's still from the week, and that doesn't really bother me. I do have some space on the previous day that I want to include some photos, but I'm going to print those and put them in a later segment of this video. So again, here I'm just trying to finish out my journaling for the day, and then I'm going to move on to my planner, which is my take a note. So you guys saw me working on my take a note earlier, but the top second section of each daily column is where I put my task list. So this was Friday. So what I'm doing now is planning out my activities for Saturday morning. Just before I go to bed. It helps me kind of relax in the evening, so I'm not stressing over what I need to do the next day. I don't do this every night. I really should, but sometimes I just don't get around to it. But you can see here, I'm just writing out my task list. If you're not familiar with the Take a Note, this is the A5 Take a Note, and it has 2 pages for each week. There is a horizontal weekly in the left-hand column, and then there's a vertical column for each day of the week. Finally, I'm moving on to my Hobonichi weeks to fill in just little facts of what happened for the day to use as a reference for when I'm going to journal later. I initially wanted to make this pretty, but it's just not going to happen. Okay, so this is Saturday morning, and Saturday Pumpkin has a very busy day. But first, I'm starting out my day with my journals and planner like I did the day before. So you'll see that I don't do my journals and planners in the same order every morning, because I do based on what I'm feeling. And this morning I was feeling like journaling on my daily journal spread first, so that's what I did. I added some cat washi because, like I said, this is going to be a busy day for Pumpkin. And so I'm just journaling about how I'm feeling at the beginning of the morning and kind of what the plan is for the day. When I do my daily journaling, I'm usually either reflecting on a specific story, or sometimes I'm just rambling about like crafting and that type of thing. Or other times I'm looking forward to things and focusing on kind of my feelings and my mood. One of the reasons I love daily journaling is because it helps me kind of pay attention to how I feel about things and make sure that I'm on track with my body and my health and my mental health. So I do really focus on a lot of that in my daily journal. My daily journal is not a summary of what happened each day. That is what I'm putting in both my Take a Note and my Hobonichi Weeks weekly spreads. So you saw me there filling in my plans for the morning, and then I worked on editing some videos. So I also get a lot of questions about how I get everything done, and I do spend a lot of my weekend working on content, and like I said, also those Fridays that I don't work. And so on here, I'm editing a video for my travel album that I've been working on for the past few weeks. It is taking up a ton of my time, and my hope is to finish it before my next vacation, which is in early May, but we'll see. I'm not sure that that's going to actually happen at this point, but I am hopeful. So at this at this stage, what I'm doing here is just going through the video that I was editing. I had started editing it another day, I think maybe on Friday, and here I'm coming back to it and working on it a little bit more. And so that's just kind of what you're seeing here before we get ready to take Pumpkin to the vet. Now he's just going for a regular checkup, but it's still a big deal for him. So I'm going to bring you guys along with me. So the rest of Saturday was pretty busy. We got a new rug, we got some new furniture, I did some crafting, and that wrapped up the busy day for Pumpkin. He was tuckered out at the end of the day. He slept so soundly that night. So after the busyness of Saturday, Sunday was a quiet day at home. We got a little bit of a later start. I baked scones in the morning, which I didn't take you along with the process because I did share that in a previous vlog. So if you're interested, I'll link that in the description box below. I had my coffee and my scones, and then I'm moving to my desk to do my morning routine. I did want to share that in these vlogs, I want this to be a little more real of what my life looks like. So I'm not using my studio lights that I use for filming a lot of my videos. Instead, I'm using the natural light from the window. So it might be a little glary, but I really enjoy it while I'm sitting here journaling, and I hope you can kind of feel the vibe that I get in the morning when I'm journaling with the sun streaming into my window, which is not all the time in New York. We have a lot of gray days, but this Sunday was a pretty sunny one, which was nice. It was Easter Sunday, which we don't celebrate, but I still put the little bunny here because he was cute for my daily calendar, and I'm doing some journaling. For this spread, you can see right now I'm using my Pilot Vanishing Point with the Diatremendous Archive ink, but at the top there I used a new ink from Ferris Wheel Press called Lantern Crossing. It's a super pretty shimmery orange-ish color, almost like a burnt orange. It's like a copper, and I have that in a lamy pen with a fine point, which is a thicker point than the Pilot Vanishing Point, even though that one is also a fine. So the different brands definitely have different tips, but I liked the idea of kind of mixing the orange in with the black on that spread. So here I am opening up my Hobonichi cousin. This is part 2 of the Avec system. So this is the second half of the year, and it is brand new. I haven't used it yet, but I decided that I was going to use one of these spreads in here that was an extra spread that I'm not going to use to swatch all of my fountain pen inks. And this is where I'm working on swatching them. I brought over all of my fountain pen inks and a paintbrush because I'm going to swatch them using a paintbrush. So I'm going to start with this Lantern Crossing from Ferris Wheel Press. That is this orange one, and I did it both in my daily spread and over here on my monthly here. This is where I'm going to do my swatch. So I'm thinking each column is going to be a different color family. So I don't have any greens because I just barely started doing fountain pens, so I'm going to leave an empty column for that. So basically the first column is going to be pinks and reds, which I don't have any of. The second is oranges and yellows, so I just have that one. Then greens, then blues, then purples, then blacks and grays, and then finally browns and other. So I do have a brown there that I swatched. And then I'm going to move on to the other colors. So I have mixed results with this swatching here. I am not that good at swatching apparently. I think you really need to use very, very little ink, and I kind of messed up. So that right there is one of my favorite blues, but it is so dark when I painted it on. It just doesn't look right, and it's just so thick. So what I end up doing is just redoing that one down below, and you'll see that in a bit. After the 3 blues, I moved on to this purple, which is called Gossiping Grapevine, which is also a new ink from Ferris Wheel Press. And you guys know I love everything purple, so I'm really excited about that ink. And it's also in such a gorgeous bottle. Next, I'm moving on to my blacks, which just like the blues, I struggled to get a good swatch of these that wasn't too thick because I don't know, the black is just so dark. So here you can see I'm kind of bending over and trying to make it not be so thick. So here's me redoing that blue. You can see it's a better swatch of it than that top one. I'm going to have to just maybe cut out some paper and cover that one up or something. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And then just using my Pilot Vanishing Point, I'm labeling each of the swatches with the brand name and the name of the ink color, because I find myself often wanting to have a swatch to kind of see what the inks look like and remember the name, because sometimes people will ask me like, well, what ink are you using? And I don't remember off the top of my head. So having this reference page here is really great to have. And I put it in the second half of the EVAC because the first half ends at the end of June and now we're almost in May. So I felt like it made more sense to put it in the second half. And I already have used all of these spreads in the first half. So that's something with the EVAC I really like. I have some extra spreads that I can use if I want to, but I don't have to. So that is how my swatching came out. Next, I went back to my journaling, and now I'm going to work on my house journal, which is something I get a lot of questions about and I don't share a ton of because some of it is personal. But basically, this is a different way to use a 5-year journal. This is the A5 5-year journal from Hobonichi. This one runs 2023 through 2027. And essentially, I use this one to document things that happen with my house. So as a homeowner, there are a lot of things you have to do to maintain your house. There are also a lot of things you do to decorate it or new things you get. And you want to remember year after year when you did things, how you do things, who you contacted, all of those things. So that is what this journal is about. Every day that something happens related to my house, I document it in here on that correct year. I will also add photos and things in here as relevant. And you'll see that some days I don't have any entries. Some days I have entries every single year. It really just depends on what I need to include and what happened when I'm doing things for my house, which is also interesting to see those patterns through the years. So this spread here is for the 19th for this Saturday. For the Saturday, today is Sunday. But I'm documenting what we did on Saturday. Like I said, we got a new shelf and we got, and I did the yard work earlier in the week, but then on Saturday we got a new shelf and we also got a new rug. So I have some photos of that. I went over to my computer and printed out all of these photos. You can see I printed the same photo multiple times. Some of these are for my house journal, some are for my take a note, some are for my Hobonichi cousin, and just various different sizes for different spreads. Now you might wonder, why am I printing the same photo so many times and including in multiple spreads? Well, because I enjoy it and I like documenting in different ways. So the ones that are going in my house journal are in here to document changes around the house. So we got that new shelf and we got that new rug. So I wanted to put photos of them. And it's referenced there on the left-hand side that we purchased these or that we got these on this day. And I'm writing in there more information. So where we got it, what it's called, how much it cost. And that's just good to have in case we ever need to get a replacement part or we want to swap it out. We want to know how long we've had it for. So then I'm just flipping through a little bit and seeing if there were any other spreads I need to update, because I don't update my house journal every single day. I update it when something happens, but sometimes things happen and I don't get to it right away. And in my Hobonichi weeks, I will make a note usually to update my house journal. The last time I updated it before this was just a few days prior when I did all of my yard work for the spring and just documenting all of that. I'm also going to document in here like the first blooms in the yard and that type of thing. And I'll include photos when it's relevant. Now I'm moving on to my Hobonichi cousin. I'm adding in some photos here to a spread from Thursday that was pretty much done. Again, using that Gossiping Grapevine purple, which you can see I also swatched on the spread. It's super cute. And just which you can see here, I have in my TWSBI Eco, which is also a fine tip. But if you've used a TWSBI before, you know they're not super fine. And then adding just a little bit of washi tape to finish off the spread. I wanted to include a few photos of the yard and my house because this was the day way I got the yard ready for spring. So I'm just kind of flipping through and seeing where there's gaps, what I want to include. And here I'm adding on this photo of pumpkin with the new rug on Saturday. And I'm just backfilling some journaling and spending some time working in my journals and planners this morning. That is the way I like to start a slow weekend or non-work day. And you can see I tend to do it at least one day a weekend, sometimes two. So as I said earlier in the video, my new routine now is to update my weekly spreads once or twice a week. So I haven't updated this one since Thursday when I did the first half of the spread. And I think I got this idea from Lindsay Scribbles. I feel like I was watching one of her older Hobonichi cousin videos, and she said that she updated the weeklies twice a week, once on Thursday to do the first page and once on Sunday to do the second page. And something just clicked for me because I used to do these every day. And I'll admit I was getting sick of them. I really love how these spreads look. I think they're functional for me because I want that record to have when I go back for journaling purposes or for scrapbooking. I like having somewhere where I can reference everything that happened, but it was getting tedious to update it every day. So my new system of writing quick notes in my Hobonichi weeks and then filling in my weekly spread only a couple times a week is making it much more doable for me. Here was a story that came to mind while I was going through the process of filling in my weekly, and I realized I had more to say about it. So instead of putting it on the weekly, I flipped to that daily page and there was some blank space left. And so I'm just journaling the story, which is about the stir fry that we made for dinner. So that's another way that I just kind of fill in my weeklies and my dailies as I go. So I'm going through my different stickers. You can see I'm adding in stickers to represent some things. I'm adding in doodles for others. I'm not the best doodler, but I'm going to get better, hopefully, as I practice. And I'm using my Tombow Funisuke soft tip to add some bigger highlighted words in the spread. I didn't do that on the left-hand side. I usually like to be more uniform about that, but I guess I just never came across it on the left-hand side. I'm doing another doodle here. I just had more to do on this side. I only printed the one photo, I think, that is across the bottom, which is that new shelf that we got in the living room. because I just felt like there was going to be more to say, and I didn't really have any good photos from any of these days. A lot of the photos I include on here are repeated elsewhere, which I said before, doesn't bother me, because if I'm adding a photo into my weekly or my daily, I might be telling different stories about it, or if it's a big highlight, I might include it in multiple places. I also have the take a note, which is definitely overlapping with this spread these days, but I do like it. I feel like the take a note is highlighting more specific events with a little more detail on just a few highlights per day, whereas this is more of the overview. But I am skipping over the routine events that I do every day. I used to document those in here, and that was part of what was making the spread tedious for me. So I'm skipping that and focusing more on the special activities that are happening that don't happen every single day, because those are the highlights from the day, and kind of focusing on what is different about that day than my typical Sunday or whatever day of the week it is. I did say, like I said, these are overlaps with the take a note. I think that what I'm feeling for next year at this point is that I will not do weekly spreads in a Hobonichi again, and I will just do the take a note as both a functional planner and a documenting place where I document stories from the week and kind of have my overview of my week in my take a note. That is tentatively my plan for next year, but it is April, so I am not yet at a place to commit to my 2026 lineup. I decided not to do my take a note spread at that point in time. I'll do it later. And instead I moved on to some scrapbooking. So here I'm working on my travel album. I do have separate videos on my YouTube channel about this travel album for Dubai and Doha and Abu Dhabi, and those are coming out in a series. At this point, only one of those videos is out, but there will be a few of them in a series, so stay tuned if you're interested in seeing that. Here, I'm just sharing with you guys a look at how messy my desk is while I'm working on this project, and this is just a big project, so it was taking up a lot of my time. This is going to be how I wrap up this vlog, as I took you along with me on my weekend. I did not accomplish nearly everything that I set out to accomplish. Currently, at this point in time, I am a little stressed because I have a lot on my plate that I want to get done. Both crafting, life, work, everything, because we have a big vacation coming up. Usually that leads me to be a little bit stressed, but I do want to finish this album, so I am just letting myself slow down a little and enjoy the process and not stress so much about getting everything done. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me on this somewhat hectic, crafty weekend, which had some slow moments, some good moments, some ups and downs, and some busy moments. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye.